In the far reaches of the Orion Arm, the gleaming spires of the Kaladrian colony rose like silver needles against the emerald sky of Daxos Prime. The Kaladrians were known throughout the galaxy for their hyper-advanced technology, anti-gravity architecture, quantum computing, and energy shields that could withstand the fury of several nuclear warheads. Their cities were marvels of engineering, their ships sleek and swift, their mastery over the fundamental forces of the universe unrivaled. And yet, as Ambassador Zyloth stood at the crystalline observation deck overlooking the bustling colony, his usually serene features were pinched with worry. For all their technological prowess, the Kaladrians were facing a crisis unlike any they had encountered before, a threat that even their vaunted science seemed powerless to stop. A solar storm of unprecedented magnitude was hurtling towards Daxos Prime, a roiling tsunami of charged particles and electromagnetic radiation that would scour the planet's surface clean of life. The Kaladrians had known it was coming for months, had thrown all their vast resources and brilliant minds into finding a solution. But time had run out. Evacuation was no longer possible. Their ships couldn't hope to carry more than a fraction of the billions who called the colony home. All they could do now was pray to gods they had long ago abandoned that their shields would hold against the onslaught. Zyloth tore his gaze away from the skyline, unable to bear the sight of so much beauty on the verge of annihilation. A chime from his wrist comm demanded his attention, an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. He tapped the crystalline band and a holoscreen flared to life before him, revealing the wizened features of Counselor Valorian. Ambassador, the elder statesman began without preamble, his voice grave. "I'm afraid I have troubling news. Our last-ditch efforts to divert or dissipate the solar storm have failed. We've exhausted every option, every resource at our disposal." He paused, as if steeling himself. "We cannot save Daxos Prime." Zyloth closed his eyes, despair washing over him like a bitter tide. He had known this was coming, had tried to prepare himself, but to hear it spoken aloud was still a blow. "I understand, Counselor," he said, his voice leaden. "I will. Inform the colony leadership. We will face our fate with what dignity we can muster." "There is one other thing," Ambassador Valorian said, a strange hesitance in his tone. "A final recourse, though I loathe to even suggest it." Zyloth's brow furrowed. "I don't understand. What recourse could there be when even the council has failed?" The counselor's image flickered as he leaned forward, his expression pained. "The humans, Ambassador. They have offered their assistance." Zyloth recoiled as if slapped, shock and revulsion warring on his face. "The humans? You cannot be serious, Counselor. They are primitive savages. What could they possibly—" "I am quite serious," Ambassador Valorian cut in, his voice stern. "And if you had paid more attention to the reports from our xenoanthropologists, you would know that the humans are far from the brutes you imagine them to be. They have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention, and right now, Daxos Prime is facing the direst necessity of all." The counselor straightened, his hologram towering over Zyloth. "A human ship arrived in orbit an hour ago, carrying a team of their best engineers and scientists. They claim to have a plan to harden your colony's infrastructure against the coming storm. I don't pretend to understand the specifics, but I believe they may be your only hope." Zyloth's mind reeled, 1,000 objections rising to his lips. To accept aid from the humans, to place the fate of his people in the hands of a species they considered little better than talking apes. It was unthinkable. And yet, what choice did they have? When extinction loomed, even the most unpalatable option became preferable to inaction. He squared his shoulders, meeting Valorian's gaze. "Very well, Counselor. I will hear what these humans have to say, but I make no promises." The human ship was ugly, Zyloth thought with distaste as the shuttle carried him up from the planet's surface. Little more than a hulking gray slab of metal and ceramic, scarred and pitted from unshielded cosmic ray exposure. It drifted in orbit like a shard of space junk, making no attempt to match the effortless grace of the Kaladrian ships clustered around the dockyards. As the shuttle slid into the human vessel's landing bay, Zyloth steeled himself. He still couldn't quite believe he was doing this, that he was about to place the survival of his people in the hands of a species that had barely cracked the secrets of fusion power. But the counselor was right, the humans were their last hope, slim though it might be. The hatch hissed open and Zyloth stepped out into the cavernous docking bay, trying to ignore the tang of recycled air and machine lubricant that assaulted his nostrils. A trio of humans was waiting for him at the bottom of the ramp. They were just as he had imagined them, tall and gangly, their proportions all wrong, their skin a sickly pinkish brown. They wore form-fitting suits of some dull gray material, unadorned save for a patch on the breast bearing a crude image of their home planet. The human in the center, a male with close-cropped hair the color of sand, stepped forward and extended a hand. "Ambassador Zyloth? I'm Commander Hawkins, lead engineer on the Thaxos Prime project. It's an honor to meet you, sir." Zyloth hesitated a moment before clasping the proffered hand, surprised by the strength of the human's grip. "The honor is mine, Commander," he said, forcing a diplomatic smile. "Though I must confess I am uncertain as to how your people propose to aid us in this crisis. Our most advanced shield technologies are unlikely to withstand the coming storm, and well, forgive me, but your species is not exactly known for its technological prowess." Hawkins just grinned, apparently unoffended. "With respect, Ambassador, I think you'll find that we're full of surprises. If you'll follow me to the briefing room, my team and I will lay out our plan." As Hawkins led him deeper into the ship, Zyloth couldn't help but marvel at the sheer primitiveness of it all. The bulkheads were bare metal, the decks simple grating, the air recyclers little more than noisy fans. And yet there was a certain rugged efficiency to it, an almost organic practicality. The human ship might not win any beauty contests, but it had crossed the stars to reach Thaxos Prime, and that was no mean feat. The briefing room was much the same as Spartan chamber, with a simple holotable in the center, around which a handful of other humans in gray jumpsuits waited. Hawkins made quick introductions: Dr. Singh, their lead physicist Kessler, and Yamamoto, the system integration specialists Kowalski, the materials expert. They all had a certain intensity about them, a coiled energy that belied their relaxed postures. "All right, here's the situation," Hawkins began without preamble, calling up a holographic model of Thaxos Prime. "In a little under 30 hours, a massive coronal mass ejection is going to hit your colony like the fist of an angry god. We're talking an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to fry every unshielded circuit on the planet, followed by a radiation surge that'll bake anything not buried under 100 meters of lead." He paused, letting the dire news sink in. "Now, your colonial leadership tells me that they've already got the population moved into deep shelters and critical infrastructure hardened as much as possible. But your shield generators are only spec'd to handle mild CMEs, not a beast like this. If that grid goes down, it's game over." Zyloth nodded grimly, feeling a fresh wave of despair. The humans clearly grasped the magnitude of the problem, but what solution could they possibly offer? As if sensing his thoughts, Hawkins zoomed the holo in on one of the planet's shield nexuses. "Here's where we come in. Our plan is to link your shield generators into a global network and boost their output by an order of magnitude. Sing." The physicist stepped forward, pulling up a dizzying array of equations alongside the holo. "We've developed a technique for using your existing grid as a waveguide to channel energy from the planet's magnetic field. By inducing resonance in the magnetosphere, we can create a sort of force multiplier effect, turning your entire world into one giant EMP dampener." He grinned wolfishly. "I won't bore you with the math, but suffice it to say that if this works, you could fly through the heart of a solar flare and not lose a single electron." Zyloth gaped at the human scientist, his mind reeling. If he understood even a fraction of what the man was proposing, it was mad. And yet there was a strange, reckless brilliance to it, using the planet itself as a shield. He had to admit, not even the finest minds on Kaladria would have dared conceive of such a thing. This is all theoretically possible, he managed at last. The stresses involved, the sheer energies. "Oh, on paper, it's absolutely possible," Kessler said, his olive features split by a grin. "The trick is going to be building the relay stations to link the nexuses and getting it all calibrated in time. That's where Yama and I come in." He pointed to his fellow engineer, a wiry man with close-cropped black hair. "We've got a crack team standing by, and more equipment than you can shake a spanner at. Just point us at the problem and stay out of our way." Kowalski, the materials specialist, raised a hand. "I've already been in touch with your fabrication plants, Ambassador. Had them start spinning up carbon nanotubes and bucky fiber by the kiloton. Your people do good work. Those lattices are damn near flawless. We'll have plenty of raw material to reinforce the waveguides and anchor points. Zyloth looked from one human to the next, seeing the same diamond-hard determination in every set of alien eyes. They believed they could do this, he realized. They really truly believed they could save his world. And in that moment, he made a decision that would echo through history. Do it, he said simply. You have my authorization to proceed, and the full cooperation of the Kaladrian people. Our resources are yours. He took a shuddering breath, meeting Hawkins' gaze. And, thank you, Commander. From the bottom of my hearts, we will not forget this. Hawkins just nodded, his grin unwavering. Thank us when it's over, Ambassador. All right, people, you heard the man. Let's get to work and show these Xenos what human ingenuity can do. What followed was a blur of frenzied activity, a desperate race against the very fury of the sun. The humans worked like beings possessed, their strange technologies and jury-rigged solutions pushed to the very limits of material science. Carbon fiber cables as thick as tree trunks were hauled into place by grav cranes, linking the shield nexuses in a glittering web that spanned the globe. Teams of engineers in exosuits toiled day and night to align the waveguides, their tools throwing showers of sparks against the soot-black sky. And through it all, the humans remained indefatigable, meeting every setback and challenge with a dogged resolve that bordered on the maniacal. They subsisted on stim tabs and bulb coffee, snatched sleep in zero-G harnesses, and worked until their pressure suits were stained with sweat and lubricant. Zyloth could only watch in awe as the network took shape, a lattice of light and purpose that stood in defiance of the oncoming storm. Even now, with mere hours to spare, he couldn't quite bring himself to believe that this madcap scheme would succeed. How could it, when the greatest minds of his own species had failed? How could these crude, ape-descended primitives hope to tame the very wrath of a star? But the humans, it seemed, had not received that particular memo. As the final relay slotted into place and the network thrummed to life, as the first tachyon streams of the solar storm lashed against the shimmering shell now encasing Paxos Prime, Zyloth stood shoulder to shoulder with Hawkins in the command center. The human commander's face was lined with exhaustion, his jumpsuit stained and rumpled, but his eyes gleamed with the light of triumph. On the screens before them, telemetry poured in from the shield nexuses, the numbers spiking and fluctuating wildly as the magnetosphere drank in the fury of the CME. For one heart-stopping moment, the relays whined like tortured things, the lattice flickering as the forces at play threatened to tear it asunder. ... And then, with a rippling wash of multicolored light, the shield snapped taut and held. The coruscating waves of the solar storm crashed and broke against it like the tide against a cliff, all its unfathomable energies dissipated and channeled away into the ether. Paxos Prime, against all odds and expectations, would endure. In the stunned silence that followed, Zyloth could only stare slackly at the data scrolling across the screens, his mind struggling to process the enormity of what he was seeing. They had done it. The humans, these strange, savage, beautiful creatures, had done the impossible. Slowly, ponderously, he turned to face Hawkins. The human was grinning fit to split his face in two, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Well, Ambassador, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Still think we're just primitives. And Zyloth, pride of the Kaladrian species, first among the ambassadorial caste. Co could only shake his head in wonder and let loose a burbling, giddy laugh. No, Commander, he replied, clasping the human's shoulder. No, I don't think I do. You humans, you're something else entirely. That day, as the light of a tamed sun shone down upon the untouched spires of the Kaladrian colony, a new name for Hawkins' species began to circulate among the galactic community. They were no longer primitives, no longer hairless apes scratching in the dirt of their isolated planet. Now, they were known as the Undaunted, and the galaxy would never be the same.